She pressed her lips against his, letting the water flow into his mouth. She continued feeding him that way, until she sensed he'd had enough. She pulled her lips away slightly, looking at him, her face only inches from his. Hello, and welcome to Devil's Fall. I hope you already watched Devil's Captive and enjoyed it. If not, make sure to watch it first to fully understand what's about to happen in the coming parts. And now, let's dive into the darkness. What just happened? That was the question echoing through Celine's mind as she watched Ricardo and Victor carry Christopher past her, blood streaming from his body. She lost all sense of her surroundings. Time stood still again. Her senses ceased entirely. Christopher was unconscious as they carried him to the car. As they passed her, his hand accidentally brushed against hers. She gasped, her eyes fixed on the blood staining the floor in front of her, refusing to look away. What was happening to her? Was she dying? Was she going to die? The bullet hadn't hit her. It had hit Christopher. So why was she feeling the pain of death? Why was her soul tearing apart inside her body? Celine didn't come to her senses until she felt Ricardo's hand pulling her, ushering her into the other car. Victor had already driven ahead to the mansion with Christopher. Ricardo sped toward the mansion at top speed to see his friend. Minutes later they arrived. He got out, helped Celine out with him, and quickly led her to a room. He sat her down on the bed and hurriedly said, "Stay here. Don't ever leave this room." Then he left her and rushed out to see his friend. Celine found herself staring at her own hand with a frozen expression, not even realizing she was doing it. Night had fallen. She could hear shouting and running outside, but her body remained frozen. No matter how much she wanted to, she couldn't move. The events began to replay before her eyes. The bullet. It hit him. He took it from me. She clutched her chest over her heart in pain. My heart hurts. I'm dying. I feel my soul being pulled from my body. He's the one who was hit, so why am I in pain? I'm suffocating. Am I going to die? Celine looked down at her body. Unharmed. I'm fine, she whispered frantically. Yes, I'm fine. The bullet was meant for me, so why am I fine? Why am I not dead? She stared into the void, calm at first, only to feel rage building inside her. Celine smiled bitterly, angrily cursing Christopher in her thoughts. Who does he think he is? I'll kill him. She stood up, ran her hand through her hair frantically. Who does he think he is to do this? Ha! What was he thinking? Why did he do this? She remembered the bullet had pierced his back. Damn it, damn it, damn it. The bullet pierced his damn body. He can't die like this. I'm the one who has to kill him. I swear I'll kill him. But he won't die like this. She paced back and forth across the room, digging her fingers into her chest. I want him dead. I want him dead, but by my own hand. He can't die for me. I'm going crazy. My mind is going to explode. Celine felt her legs give way. She collapsed to the floor and sat there, exhausted, whispering to herself. I wanted him dead. Why do I feel like I'm going to die now if something bad happens to him? He took the bullet for me. She paused, staring at nothing. Why did he do that? She hugged herself in fear and screamed, in pain, in despair. She remained like that for several minutes. Then suddenly she jumped up, her face filled with terror. I have to see him, she said. I won't stay here while he's dying. I want to see him. She rushed out of the room, heading toward Christopher. As soon as Ricardo had brought Celine to the room, he ran like a madman toward the room where Christopher lay. His blood boiled inside him. If anything happened to Christopher, he would never forgive himself, because he had forgotten the warning about the Russian Mafia. Because of him, his friend was now fighting for his life. If anything happened to him, he would never forgive himself. Victor was standing in front of the door to Christopher's room when Ricardo came rushing in, breathless and terrified. Tell me he's alive, Victor, Ricardo said. Please, tell me he's okay. Victor grabbed his shoulder. Calm down. The doctors are inside with him. They're not letting anyone in. Ricardo smashed everything in front of him, shouting angrily at Victor. Calm down? This isn't the time for your outbursts, Ricardo. We need to be strong now. It's Christopher. He'll be fine. So calm down and get a grip. Ricardo leaned wearily against the wall behind him. Yeah, he said. He'll be fine. It's Christopher, for God's sake. He's been shot more times than he's taken breaths. Maybe this is the 1,000th attempt to kill him. He's survived every time, and he'll do it now. Victor wanted to tell him that this time was different. The bullet was poisoned, The situation was dire, but he simply remained silent. He could barely calm Ricardo as it was. If he spoke now, Ricardo would inevitably bring the palace crashing down on the heads of the doctors inside. Ricardo and Victor stood in silence, staring at the door. Then Celine arrived. She stared at them calmly, her features as rigid as stone, her eyes devoid of any emotion. "Is he okay?" she asked. "We don't know," Ricardo said. "The doctors are still inside." Celine swallowed hard, clenching her teeth to control herself. She leaned against the wall and stared at the floor in complete silence. A heavy silence fell over the room. Each of them felt as if their soul were being pulled from their body, yet they remained silent, showing no reaction whatsoever. The situation remained the same until Christopher let out a scream that echoed throughout the entire palace. Celine gasped, losing her breath. Victor and Ricardo stood up in fear. Then one of the doctors came out, his face filled with terror. "You have to help us," the doctor said. "We can't control him. I have to remove the poisoned bullet. It's close to his heart. It's a good thing it didn't hit him directly, but he's in terrible pain. If he moves, we might lose him. You must hold him still for me." Ricardo swallowed hard. "Okay." He and Victor entered the room with the doctor, leaving the door slightly ajar. Christopher was screaming loudly. Ricardo's shouts, ordering them to hold him down, filled the room as well. Celine put her hands over her ears in fear, but it was no use. She could still hear the sound of his anguished screams. "They're killing him," she thought. "He's in pain." Celine looked up toward the door and whispered, "I have to see him. He has to stay alive so I can kill him with my own hands. He can't die now." She paused. "I'm going in." She opened the door and stepped inside. But the moment her foot crossed the threshold, she froze in place, eyes wide with shock, breath caught in her throat at the sight before her. Christopher lay sprawled on the bed, shirtless, his body covered in blood. He was screaming with his eyes closed, and Victor and Ricardo were trying to hold him down. His body was fighting the pain with all its might. The doctors were too afraid to even approach him. The bed shook violently as Christopher struggled to break free from Ricardo's grip. Celine heard one of the doctors say, "You have to calm him down quickly. The poison is starting to burn his body from the inside. If we don't remove the bullet, he will definitely die." Christopher continued to scream in excruciating pain as Celine approached the bed with a dazed expression. She reached the bedside. Ricardo said, "What are you doing here? Get out of here quickly." Celine didn't move from her spot. She remained still, staring only at Christopher's pained face. His face was drenched in sweat. His lips had turned black from the poison. His features were tortured, as if he were struggling against death itself. Her voice barely audible, Celine said, "Stay away from him." Ricardo shouted at her, "Leave, Celine." She screamed at him at the top of her lungs, "Keep your damn hands off him." Silence fell over the room. All that remained was Christopher's pained voice. Ricardo stared at Celine's angry eyes with a look of surprise. He turned toward Victor, who was staring back at him. They exchanged a glance, one that only the two of them understood. Without a word, Ricardo and Victor moved away from Christopher and stepped back. Christopher remained alone on the bed, writhing from side to side in great pain. Celine climbed onto the bed beside him. Her expression was calm, her eyelids flushed. She gently placed her hand on his cheek. He was trembling from the intensity of the pain. He ground his teeth so hard they were nearly shattering his jaw. "You can hear me, right?" Celine said softly. "I know you can. You can't die like this. The great Christopher will die only by my hand. Calm down so they can help you." The doctor shook his head. "He can't hear you. He's unconscious from the severity of his pain. The poison is burning him from the inside. You have to step back so we can help him." Celine placed her other hand on his shoulder, trying to keep him from moving, but she couldn't. She leaned over him, staring at his face with eyes full of tears. "He's dying. You can feel it," she whispered. "I know you can hear me, Christopher. Please, calm down." She closed her eyes tightly and continued, "You can't die because of me. You're my enemy. How can you die while saving me?" Her voice broke. "It's not fair." She opened her eyes and looked at him. "Please listen to me, Christopher. I'm Celine. Please, don't die now." She gasped. Tears streamed from her eyes like rain, falling onto his face. She swallowed hard and rested her forehead against his in surrender, just as she felt him take his last breath. Let your pain be my pain, she whispered. Let your pain become mine. Let your death become mine. Come back to me, Christopher. Come back to me. Give me your suffering, and let death take me in your place, for I cannot live with your love, and I refuse to live while hating you. She kissed his lips gently, a quick kiss. I love you, she breathed. Ricardo bowed his head to the ground in despair. His eyes were red. His body trembled with rage. Stop trembling with rage, you bastard, Victor hissed. You'll bring the place crashing down on our heads. Look, Victor pointed. He's calming down. Ricardo quickly raised his head and looked toward Christopher. He found him frozen in place in Celine's arms. The doctor's voice broke with disbelief. We're going to remove the bullet now and get rid of the poison. Ricardo laughed, running his fingers through his hair as he whispered to himself. Sure enough, that bastard will survive, just like always. Celine slowly opened her eyes as she heard Ricardo's laughter. She lifted her head to look at him. He was calm. She gasped with laughter, tears still streaming from her eyes. The doctor said, "Ma'am, move away from him so we can finish the procedure." Celine quickly moved away from him. She wanted to get out of bed, but Christopher's hand grabbed hers. Celine looked at him in surprise, then turned her gaze to the doctor, who looked just as confused. The doctor said, "It's fine. You can stay by his side. The rest of you, leave." Victor spoke calmly, but his voice carried an edge of ice. "We'll leave, but listen to me, doctor. I'll make you the richest man alive if you save him, and I'll burn you alive if anything happens to him." Victor and Ricardo left, closing the door behind them. Celine sat beside Christopher, holding his hand with both of hers. She looked at him with intense fear. His wound was bleeding profusely. Her clothes and hands were stained with his blood. The doctor approached him with a sharp instrument, while telling the other doctors to prepare something to cauterize the wound. Celine swallowed hard as the doctor grasped the wound, ready to remove the bullet. In a trembling voice, she asked, "Will it hurt him?" The doctor replied, "Unfortunately, ma'am, it will hurt him terribly, but we must do this quickly, before his heart stops." Celine nodded in agreement, while gripping Christopher's hand even tighter. The doctor began to remove the bullet. Christopher's body convulsed. He let out a loud scream. Celine gasped, placing her hand over her heart. She brought her face close to his, and whispered, "I'm here. I'm here. It will be over soon. Hold on a little longer, please. Just a little longer." Christopher gritted his teeth in pain. His body burned like fire from the high fever. He let out another scream as he gripped her hand tightly. Celine said, "I'm here. Hold on a little longer for me." She kissed his cheek. "You'll be fine. Just keep breathing." Celine knew Christopher was in intense pain. She pressed her forehead against his cheek and closed her eyes tightly. Christopher gasped in pain as the doctor removed the poisoned bullet from his body. The doctor smiled. "I've taken it out. Come on, let's stitch up the wound. And the rest of you, bring the antidote so we can inject it and flush the poison from his system." Celine smiled calmly, looking at Christopher. He was exhausted, breathing very weakly. "Did you hear?" she said softly. "They got the bullet out. He'll be fine." The doctor began to stitch the wound. By the time he finished, the other doctors had prepared the syringe. The doctor took hold of Christopher's arm. He had slipped into a deep coma, and injected the antidote so his body could rid itself of the poison. The doctor smiled. "Finally, we're done." Celine, crying, asked, "Will he live?" The doctor smiled. "Yes, definitely. In fact, Mr. Christopher is the strongest person I've ever seen in my life. I've never met a man with the stamina he has. If the bullet hadn't been poisoned, we would have given him anesthesia and performed the surgery, but that would have put his life at even greater risk. But for now, he's fine. The danger has completely passed." Celine smiled, tears streaming down her face. She kissed his forehead. "Did you hear that?" she whispered. "You won't die. Not now." She turned to the doctor. "He looks very pale. Are you sure he'll be okay?" "Yes, ma'am," the doctor said. "He's out of danger, but his body is weak now and he needs rest. I'll leave some medicine here for the fever, and come back tomorrow to check on him." Celine nodded at him with a smile. "Thank you for saving him." The doctor smiled and left with his team. Celine sighed, looking at Christopher. He was in a deep sleep. His exhaustion and pain were evident. She smiled and said, "You jerk. Why did you do something so stupid? How dare you do that to me?" Ricardo and Victor entered the room. their faces beaming with joy. Ricardo smiled. "Thank you, Celine. You just saved his life." Victor nodded. "Yes, you saved Christopher's life. I'm so grateful to you." Celine shook her head. "I didn't do anything. I just returned the favor. The bullet was meant for me in the first place." "Are you okay? You look tired. Why don't you go wash up and get some sleep? I'll stay with him." "No," Celine said. "I'll stay here. He might need something. The doctor said his body is weak, and he has a fever. I'll stay with him." Ricardo smiled. "Okay, I don't think he wants anyone but you to stay with him anyway." Celine swallowed shyly, as Victor spoke softly. "Take good care of him. He's like a brother to me." Celine nodded quietly. Ricardo and Victor left. Celine sighed deeply as she walked toward Christopher. His body was covered in blood. She brought a towel and some water, and began to gently wipe the blood off him, carefully, so he wouldn't feel any pain. She didn't allow her mind to think about anything. Not now. She would be angry with herself later. Not now. When she was done, she went to the bathroom and took a quick shower to wash the blood off herself. She put on something simple to sleep in and returned to his side. He was still unconscious, but it was clear from his features that he was in pain. She touched his sweaty forehead. He had a high fever. She hurried to get water and make compresses for him. In that huge mansion, Celine was sitting on the bed next to Christopher, having just finished applying compresses to him. His fever had started to go down a little. She picked up a glass of water, trying to get him to drink, but she failed. She sighed, unsure of what to do, and looked at him with a puzzled expression. "Did you have to be a hero?" she said. "Taking care of you doesn't mean I want you, or that I've forgiven you. I'm only doing this because I don't want to owe you my life." She kept staring at him for a long time, cursing herself. Then she took a sip from the glass without swallowing it, and pressed her lips against his, letting the water flow into his mouth. She continued feeding him that way, until she sensed he'd had enough. She pulled her lips away slightly, looking at him with her face just inches from his. She kept staring at him for a long time, until he startled her. "What happened?" she whispered. Christopher's voice was weak, barely audible. "This is the best water I've ever tasted." Celine swallowed her saliva fearfully, moving away from him slightly. "Are you awake?" Christopher opened his eyes slightly, smiling slyly. "Why, were you hoping I'd never wake up?" Celine's eyes widened. "How long have you been awake?" "Since you started applying the compresses." Celine felt a surge of anger and embarrassment. "You bastard! Why didn't you say you were awake?" She struck him on the chest. Christopher let out a pained cry. "Oh my God, I'm sorry, I forgot." Celine's voice trembled. "Are you okay?" In truth, Christopher wasn't hurt by her blow at all. He just wanted to see her worry about him. He wanted to see her beautiful eyes, filled with fear for him. He had heard every word she said to him as he fought death. She loves him. Those words made him fight to stay alive. He was so happy to hear them from her. Christopher smiled as he watched her gently blow on his wound. Stupid girl. He had been so angry with her for clinging to Ricardo. He had wanted to hit her with all his might. But now, he just wanted to gaze at her worried features forever. He didn't regret taking the bullet for her. If he could turn back time, he would do it all over again. But even so, he was angry at the weakness that Celine had become to him. Celine asked anxiously, "Does it still hurt?" Christopher stared at her coldly. "Go call Victor. I need to take care of some business." "No, I won't," Celine said. "The work can wait. You just narrowly escaped death. You need to get some rest." Christopher gritted his teeth in pain. She was right. He felt like hell was burning inside his body. He replied coldly, "And who's to blame for that?" Celine lowered her eyes to the ground, feeling guilty. Christopher snapped, "You're always such a fool." Celine's eyes flashed with anger. "I don't remember asking you to save me." Christopher shot her a deadly look that made her swallow hard. "You're right," he added coldly. "I should have let that bullet hit you. I'm the fool. If you died, I would have been rid of you. So remember this well. Next time, I won't hesitate." He paused, his voice turning ice cold. "And don't think I saved you because you mean anything to me. No, I would have done that for anyone, whether it was Ricardo or Victor." Celine felt a deep sadness wash over her at his words. She remained silent, staring at the floor. Christopher sighed quietly and reached for the blanket, trying to cover himself. But Celine stopped him. "The doctor said your body is burning up," she said. "You shouldn't warm it. Let your wound heal." Christopher coughed lightly. Celine hurried to bring him a glass of water and offered it to him. Christopher smiled inwardly, though he kept his expression stiff. Damn it, he's going to enjoy this a lot. If he'd known she'd do this, he would have stabbed himself a long time ago. Celine placed the glass of water to his lips and fed him with the utmost care. "Do you need anything?" she asked. Christopher didn't answer her. He just closed his eyes, ignoring her. Celine sighed helplessly as she walked toward the chair. "Where are you going?" he said. "I'm going to sleep here tonight, so I don't disturb you," she said. Christopher, indifferent and without opening his eyes, spoke in a commanding tone. "Sleep on the bed." Celine stared at him for a long time, wondering to herself why he was treating her this way. Why did he save her if he was going to regret it like this afterward? She walked quietly toward the bed and lay down on it, careful to stay on the edge, as far away from him as possible, while she looked at him. As for Christopher, he was truly enjoying making her feel guilty. She should be grateful that he wasn't in full health, or he would have shown her her mistake. The bitch dares to toy with him by clinging to Ricardo. But damn it, he couldn't stay angry at her. He needed her. He wanted to feel her in his arms. He wanted her to be close to him. Christopher said, "Damn that bastard doctor. I feel cold. How can I warm myself up?" Celine's voice was full of guilt. "Are you feeling very cold?" Christopher didn't answer her. She found herself, without realizing it, watching his pained features. She cursed under her breath, certain she would regret this, and she moved closer to him. She wrapped her arms around him and placed her feet against his. Christopher smiled slyly. Celine said shyly, "Don't smile. It's just the only way to warm up a little. I still hate you, but I'm only doing this because I feel guilty." Christopher paid no attention to her words. Instead, his smile widened. "I'm still cold," he added. Celine sighed, holding him tighter until her face was buried in his neck. Christopher smiled even more happily as he wrapped his arm around her back, pulling her closer to him. Celine gasped when he put his arm around her, holding her tightly against him, but she relaxed a little after that, staring into space as she thought, "What are you doing? What happened won't change anything between them. This is completely wrong. What he's doing will only make things worse." She kept thinking about this until Christopher's voice snapped her out of her thoughts. "Stop thinking," he said. "Just for tonight. Let's leave everything behind. All the hatred we feel for each other. All our thoughts. Leave them behind. Let's leave tonight just for Christopher and Celine. So close your eyes and forget everything else." Celine smiled sadly, lifting her head to look at his face. "Do you think we can let them breathe just for tonight? Can Celine not hate Christopher just for tonight?" Christopher opened his eyes, staring at her with a stiff expression. "Yes," he said, "for one night." Celine smiled as tears fell from her eyes. She placed her hand gently on his cheek. "I was going crazy when I saw you injured in front of me," she whispered. "Christopher, please don't let me feel what I felt tonight, watching you die in front of me. My soul was burning. I don't think I would have survived if anything had happened to you." Christopher smiled sadly, gently wiping her tears away. "I was happy," he said. "I've never felt such happiness in my life as I did today, hearing your terrified voice and seeing your tears falling for me. The fear you felt today is nothing compared to the fear I felt when I saw that bullet heading toward you. How dare they even think of harming the love of my life? I'll burn them alive under your feet, and mine alone." Celine laughed softly. "You bastard," she said. "Are you still in pain?" Christopher replied with a calm smile. "No, it was a lie. Of course it was a lie." He said it so she wouldn't feel guilty. In reality, he was in excruciating pain, but he had no time to feel it now. Tonight, he would breathe a little, forget everything, and breathe to live a little. They continued to stare at each other, their eyes never leaving one another, until Christopher smiled slyly and pushed Celine down beneath him. Celine gasped in surprise as she saw Christopher's body come to rest on top of hers, that devilish smile covering his face. She sighed sarcastically, looking at him. "That smile doesn't bode well," she said. "Come on, get away. You're wounded. You just barely escaped death." Christopher leaned closer. "Do you think I'm going to waste this night just staring at you?" He buried his face in her neck, inhaling her scent. "Damn," he murmured. "I love the way you smell." He kissed her neck. Celine smiled calmly, pushing him away. "Christopher, you're wounded." Christopher's smile turned sly. "Baby, even if I were burning in hell right now, I'd still make love to you." Celine smiled shyly. Christopher's voice dropped lower. Damn it, you're killing me. He kissed her forcefully, taking her breath away. It was a savage kiss, full of passion. Celine smiled during the kiss. Damn it, this bastard had almost died a moment ago. His feverish body was burning hers, but she didn't care. Her soul wanted him. Her body begged for his touch. She dug her fingers into his back, returning his kiss, forgetting the whole world. Christopher pulled away from her, biting her lower lip with a sly smile. Celine gasped, trying to catch her breath. Damn, girl, Christopher said. You're hot as hell. He kissed her again, lifting her from the bed to sit in his lap, running his hands all over her body. He broke the kiss to bury his head in her neck, kissing her. Ah, Celine breathed. Christopher lifted his head, looking at her face as he grabbed her hair from behind and pulled it tightly. Say my name again, he commanded. Celine moaned in pain, then added with a seductive smile, Christopher. She kissed him, placing her hand on his chest, forgetting his wound. He felt intense pain, but didn't speak. He just smiled, pulling her closer to him as he continued kissing her. He laid her back on the pillow. I swear, he whispered, you will be my death, Celine. And so they began to make love together that night, alone, without thinking of anything, forgetting everything behind them. The hatred, the revenge, the resentment, the tyranny, just for this night. On that dark night, Joanna's room was shrouded in darkness, broken only by a faint beam of moonlight, hidden behind dark clouds. Joanna slowly woke up, looked around, and realized it was nighttime. She stared at the ceiling for a long time, mentally reviewing the last things that had happened to her before she lost consciousness. She remembered how Ricardo had forced her not to leave the house, which had made her furious. How dare that bastard do that? Joanna got out of bed and headed toward the bathroom, cursing Ricardo under her breath. She took a quick shower, then went out to get dressed. She chose a sky blue shirt with white pants, but at the last minute, she changed her mind. Yes, she decided to get back at him this time. He always made her angry and played with her feelings and nerves, but not this time. So she put what she'd chosen back in the closet, and pulled out a very short, off-the-shoulder black dress to wear. She let her hair down, put on a pair of black high heels, and then walked out of the room, and out of the entire palace. Elsewhere, our little princess, Emily, was sitting quietly in her room, waiting for Victor to arrive, so she could set the table for dinner. Emily was lost in thought, pondering the life she was living, and how she could escape the vortex of terror she was trapped in. Several minutes passed. Emily remained just as she was, lost in thought, in an atmosphere enveloped by silence from all sides, until the ringing of the doorbell interrupted her. She jumped up from her seat, thinking it was Victor, and hurried downstairs to open the door for him, fearing he might punish her. It was true that he had ended her punishment, and no longer treated her like his pet, but his strict control over her life was still very much in place. Emily opened the door, and was surprised to find Joanna standing there. Joanna, Emily said in surprise. Joanna looked bored. No, her cousin. Emily smiled lightly at Joanna's joke, and replied calmly, Come in. Joanna entered the mansion, followed by Emily, and they headed toward the reception hall. How about some apple juice? Emily asked calmly. No, Joanna said. I want wine. Emily's eyes widened. What? Joanna smiled slightly and added, I want to drink wine, but not here, at the nightclub. Emily hesitated. Okay, and what does that have to do with me? Come with me, Joanna said. No way, Emily replied. I'm not coming. Joanna tilted her head, her voice dripping with boredom. Why? Emily crossed her arms. Do you want Victor to skin me alive? Okay, tell him we're going. He won't agree, Emily said flatly. Joanna quickly snatched Emily's phone from her hands. Emily gasped in surprise. What are you going to do? Emily asked. Joanna shrugged. Let's give it a try. We've got nothing to lose. She sent Victor a text that read, Hi Victor, can I go with Joanna to the Black Flower nightclub? We'll be back soon. Victor replied immediately with just one word, No. Joanna sighed in boredom and handed the phone back to Emily. Fine, she said. I'll go alone. Emily motioned for her to leave. Joanna walked out of the room toward the club, while Emily returned to her room, sitting quietly, waiting for the arrival of her lover and tormentor. Elsewhere, Ricardo and Victor had just finished taking out the Mafia that had assassinated Christopher. Yes, they wouldn't allow themselves to let their friend's blood be spilled in vain. For every drop of blood Christopher had shed, they turned the place into a bloodbath. Ricardo sat on the ground, looking at the carnage before him. He sighed with relief. "Now I can sleep," he said. Victor chuckled lightly at his friend. "You'll still be a bastard tomorrow. You won't change." Ricardo grinned. "Come on, let's go face the Canadian Mafia now. What do you say?" Victor replied sarcastically. "Whoever came out of this massacre just to go back into another one, did you forget to say goodbye to someone in heaven before coming back down to earth?" Ricardo laughed heartily. "Yeah, you're right." Victor stood. "Come on, come to my place and have some coffee." "How about I make it?" Ricardo offered. Victor shot him a look. "No. The last thing I need is your coffee drenched in vinegar and pepper." Ricardo smiled. "Do you still remember?" "How could I forget Christopher's expression when he tasted it?" Victor said. "All right," Ricardo said. "Let's go." Victor and Ricardo headed toward the palace. As soon as they arrived, they entered the reception hall and sat down quietly. "Don't be surprised. Even demons need rest." Ricardo leaned back. "Are you going to keep your little princess locked up in her prison?" Victor's voice was cold. "Yes. She'll stay there and won't get out as long as I'm still alive." Ricardo sighed. "I feel so sorry for her. I wish there was someone who could mess with her mind and make her rebel." Victor's jaw tightened. "There is. That nuisance Joanna is doing it. In fact, today she was going to take Emily with her to the nightclub, and if she had done it, I swear I would have buried them both together." Ricardo furrowed his brows and asked, "Who went to the nightclub?" Victor replied coldly, "Joanna." A few seconds of silence followed. Then came the sound of a table, and everything on it, being smashed. Ricardo stormed out of the mansion, furious as a hurricane. It looked like the night wasn't going to end well. As for Victor, he sighed wearily before heading upstairs to his beloved, who was waiting for him. When Victor reached the top, he opened the door and stepped inside. He looked toward the bed and found it empty. He searched for his beloved with his eyes, scanning the room, until he finally found her, sitting in the corner, hugging her legs, resting her head between her knees, trembling with fear like a wet kitten. Victor approached her with slow, quiet steps. His presence echoed through the room, making the little princess tremble even more. As soon as he stood before her, he sat down on the floor near her, and whispered in a low, manly voice, right in front of her face, "Why are you crying?" Emily looked at him, her cheeks wet with tears. "I'm scared," Victor asked calmly. "Of me?" Emily shook her head and added, trembling, "The sound of the crash, downstairs." Victor brought his fingers close to Emily's cheeks, wiping her tears with his hands. "It's Ricardo," he said. "You know he's a damn bastard. As soon as he heard Joanna was leaving, he turned into a raging storm. Don't worry. He just smashed the table and left." Emily nodded in understanding, but she couldn't stop her sobs. The fear was still inside her. Victor moved closer to her, cupping her chin. He pressed his lips gently against hers. Emily gasped in surprise, but her gasp was muffled by Victor's lips devouring hers. Victor smiled slightly at her reaction, then broke the kiss calmly. "Kiss me back, Emily," he said in a commanding tone. She gasped. "But," Victor cut her off sharply. "Come on, quickly." So Emily, out of fear, quickly pressed her lips against Victor's, and returned his kiss. Victor was overjoyed by this moment, feeling as though he were tasting the nectar of paradise with her lips. Damn, damn, damn. He would surely die by her hands. His heartbeat quickened wildly. His breathing grew heavy. Emily had always had a powerful effect on him. Victor broke the kiss calmly and added with a smile, "Good girl." He picked Emily up in his arms and carried her toward the bathroom. He placed her in the bathtub and began to undress her. Emily looked up at him fearfully. "What are you doing, Victor?" "I'm going to bathe you." Emily's cheeks flushed. "Stop. I can bathe myself." "I know that," Victor said, "but I'm going to do it for you now. And one more thing. I don't want to hear a sound from you until I'm done bathing you. If you disobey, I'll punish you." Emily fell silent, frightened. She shyly closed her eyes, her cheeks flushed red with embarrassment. Victor said nothing more. He began to wash her body and hair with great care, as if she were a child in his hands. After he finished, he dried her off and carried her to the bed. He went to the closet, took out some comfortable pajamas for her, and helped her put them on. Then he turned off the lights and climbed into bed next to his little girl, cradling her in his arms. They both fell asleep. though each of them was dreaming a different dream. At Joanna's, Joanna was sitting at the bar, sipping a glass of wine, and watching the bodies sway to the music. In several corners, couples were kissing. And why not? She was, after all, in a nightclub. It was already late, well past midnight, but Joanna wasn't bored. On the contrary, she was overcome by an intense desire to dance. She got up from the bar, headed to the center of the floor, and began dancing wildly. The song playing was an energetic one that made anyone want to move. Joanna danced and danced, paying no attention to anyone, until a young man joined her on the dance floor. She smiled. Unconcerned, she continued dancing with him. She danced as if she would die if she stopped. She poured all her feelings and worries into the movement. Yes, she kept dancing like that for a long time, oblivious to her surroundings, feeling nothing but the movement of her body, until she was jolted out of her trance by a hard slap that landed on her cheek, knocking her to the ground. Then she heard the sound of gunfire and the girl's screams. She didn't understand anything. She could barely process what was happening. She managed to lift her head just enough to see that the club had emptied, and the young man who had been dancing with her was lying on the floor, blood covering his face as he coughed violently. She raised her body slightly and looked ahead. Ricardo stood there, calm. Blood covered his white shirt, along with the gun he held in his right hand. She looked into his eyes and trembled with fear, for his eyes were intense, devoid of emotion, without a single shred of mercy. Ricardo smiled a terrifying smile, full of evil. He stepped forward toward the young man, stood before him, and calmly aimed his gun. He fired at the young man's arm. The young man screamed in pain. Ricardo closed his eyes with pleasure, as if listening to a musical melody, rather than the screams of a man in pain. He smiled broadly, and emptied the gun into the young man's left arm. The boy screamed loudly. Ricardo whispered, audible over the cries, "No one touches what is mine." He reloaded his gun and fired it with his right hand. The young man's screams rose, accompanied by Ricardo's delighted laughter. He reloaded again and fired this time into his right leg, then did the same to his left leg. Ricardo looked toward Joanna, to find her staring in shock at the young man lying in a pool of blood before her. Ricardo said with terrifying calm, "I think that's enough for him. I need to focus on my little girl. Don't you agree, my dear Joanna?" Joanna looked at him in utter horror, unable to utter a single word. Ricardo shook his head. He finally fired his last bullet. It lodged in the young man's skull, leaving him a lifeless corpse. After that, Ricardo turned toward Joanna. He approached her with calm steps, but fires were burning inside him. He drew near her and crouched down to be at her level, saying in a dark, deranged tone, "Did you miss me, my dear?" Joanna swallowed hard in terror and didn't dare utter a word. Ricardo smiled maniacally. He grabbed a handful of her hair and dragged her out of the club by it. Joanna screamed in pain as her hair was torn by his hands, and her back scraped raw from rubbing against the floor. But Ricardo didn't care. He kept dragging her until he reached his car. He opened the car door, forced her to stand, then yanked her hair upward to roughly shove her inside. He slammed the door shut, got in himself, and drove at top speed toward the palace. Ricardo arrived at the palace, got out, and walked toward Joanna. He opened the door and dragged her by the arm inside. Joanna felt the bones in her hand nearly shatter in his grip, but she said nothing, knowing what was to come. Ricardo reached a room on the top floor of the palace. It was locked. He took the key from his pocket and opened it, then shoved Joanna inside with such force that she fell to her knees. He closed the door behind him and walked toward her. Joanna began backing away in terror and fear. Ricardo kept advancing toward her as she retreated, until she was trapped between him and the wall. Joanna trembled. Ricardo, it's me." The slap that hit her didn't let her finish. Joanna gasped in pain, only to be surprised by another slap, followed by another and another. Ricardo rained painful slaps down on her and didn't stop until blood was streaming from her mouth and nose, and the marks of his fingers were etched on her face. Ricardo grabbed Joanna's hair tightly, bringing his face close to hers. He licked the blood from her lips calmly. "You've committed an unforgivable mistake, my little one," he said. "You'll be punished for it, and severely." Joanna's voice was barely a whisper. I didn't. Ricardo let go of Joanna's hair with a force that pained her, saying angrily as he gritted his teeth. I didn't know you were a whore. Did you go there to look for someone to sleep with? Joanna moaned in pain, tears streaming down her cheeks as she shook her head in denial. But would that help? Of course not. Ricardo was completely out of control. His voice dropped even lower, burning with rage. Did that boy sleep with you? Since you're such a whore, why didn't you tell me? I would have saved you the trouble of going. Joanna whispered painfully. I hate you. No sooner had she uttered those words than she felt her head being smashed against the wall. Damn it, damn it, damn it, Ricardo shouted angrily. You hate me, do you? Well, fine. Let's see now. Let me hate you more and more, you whore. He smiled angrily. He grabbed her clothes and tore her dress violently, then ripped her underwear as well, until she was completely naked in front of him. Joanna gasped in fear, but Ricardo cut her off, pushing her to the ground and mounting her. No, Ricardo, please, Joanna begged. Don't do it, Rick. Ricardo silenced her by kissing her with such force that he tore her lips between his teeth. She tried to move or resist, but to no avail. Ricardo was like a beast pouncing on its prey. Ricardo stood up after finishing what he had done and looked down at Joanna, who lay unconscious beneath him. He looked at her and was startled by the blood between her legs. Yes, it was the blood of her virginity. He looked at her with a mix of pain and tenderness, but his expression quickly changed as the memory flashed through his mind. Her dancing with that young man. He moved away from her quickly, as if something had stung him. He grabbed her torn clothes and left the room after locking the door behind him, leaving Joanna unconscious in that pitiful state. Elsewhere, specifically in that mansion, Christopher stood in front of the bathroom mirror, leaning against the wall. His injury hurt like hell. He gritted his teeth as he washed his face. Celine was asleep outside, so he didn't want to wake her. His body was burning from the inside. He wrapped the towel around his neck and leaned against the wall. He was in agony. He stayed like that for a moment until he managed to control himself. He washed his face again, staring at his reflection, gritting his teeth in anger at the pain. Then he sighed and stepped out. He looked at the bed to find Celine still asleep. He smiled. He walked slowly toward the drinks table, poured himself a glass, and downed it in one gulp. Celine slowly opened her eyes to find Christopher sitting at the drinks table with his back to her. She smiled and sighed, thinking about what she had done. She really didn't know what she had done now, but whatever it was, she didn't regret it. The bastard. Had he really almost died for her? She smiled shyly as she remembered what had just happened between them. It was different from all the previous times. He had treated her gently, his kisses, his whispers in her ear. Her smile widened as she remembered everything that had happened, lost in her thoughts, the smile never leaving her face. Nothing snapped her out of that state except Christopher's mocking voice. Is there a reason for that huge smile? He said. Looks like you've been having a good time thinking about what happened between us, right? Celine's eyes widened in surprise. He was sitting next to her on the bed, staring at her with a sly smile. Damn it. Had she been smiling like an idiot just a moment ago in front of him? She closed her eyes in embarrassment, covering her face with the bedsheet. Damn, 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 you idiot. Christopher laughed. Shut up, Celine mumbled. Christopher sighed, bringing his face close to her covered face. She could feel his breath from under the sheet. She kept staring at him like that, with a slight smile. Christopher kissed her lips, then smiled, as he kissed her cheek. Nothing separated them but the sheet, but his lips were enough to set her body ablaze. Move it, he said quietly. No, I'm embarrassed. Christopher's smile widened. You weren't like that a moment ago. Your voice, screaming my name, filled the room. Celine's cheeks flushed even more as she remembered that. Damn it. Why does he have to bring that up in front of her? He's such an idiot. She grabbed the blanket tightly, preventing him from pulling it away. The sun will rise soon, she said, and our night will be over. Then I'll push him away so everything goes back to the way it was. Christopher's smile vanished, replaced by a stern expression. Let me just see your eyes, he said. I want to see what's in them, before they fill with hatred again. Celine clenched her teeth in pain as she tried to control her emotions. She didn't want to see him until this night was over and the dream ended, so she could wake up to her reality once more. But she also wanted to see the man she loved, before he turned into the man who made her life an unbearable hell. She swallowed hard, lifting the blanket slightly to reveal only her eyes. Christopher sighed deeply, with great sadness as he gazed at them. He smiled. His face was very close to hers. "Damn," he whispered, "I love your eyes." "Liar," Celine said. "You must have told many girls before me that." Christopher's eyes glinted. "Are you jealous?" Celine stared at him for a moment. Then she nodded. "Yes." Christopher smiled slyly as his fingers removed the rest of the veil from her face. Without her protesting, he gazed at her lips quietly, feeling the weight of her breath. He kissed her cheek, her nose, her eyes. Celine swallowed her saliva with ragged breaths. Christopher whispered, his lips drawing closer to hers. "Your eyes drive me crazy. You're the only woman I've ever said this to." Celine smiled as Christopher pressed his lips against hers without moving. She wanted to kiss him, but he pulled away, smiling mischievously at her flushed face. "Do you want me to kiss you?" he murmured. He licked her lower lip, biting it gently. Celine moaned, trying to kiss him again, but he pulled away. She swallowed her saliva angrily and turned her face away from him. Christopher smiled, resting his nose on her cheek. "I love seeing you angry," he said. He sighed, inhaling her scent as he continued. "One won't be enough. I'll want more, and I'm afraid your body won't be able to handle it. I can't stay nice all the time." He bit her ear as he finished speaking. Celine smiled slyly. "I'm not that weak anymore, Christopher." She pushed him away and sat on top of his stomach. Christopher looked a little surprised, but then he smiled slyly. Celine ran her hand over his hard chest muscles, then over his wound. "Does it hurt, Christopher?" she asked calmly. "No," he said. She smiled, kissing the spot of the wound, then his neck, just below his throat. Christopher watched her, breathing heavily. He knew she was doing this to tease him. Celine kissed his cheek, just below his lip, careful not to let their lips touch. Christopher closed his eyes and swallowed hard. She was truly driving him crazy. He had never wanted a woman this way before. He had never felt this way with any of his former lovers. Celine was really enjoying this. Teasing him was the thing she loved most in life. But it didn't last long. Christopher quickly pushed her down hard, pinning her beneath him. His gaze was filled with unbridled desire, enough to make her body melt beneath his. Christopher smiled slyly. "Remember," he added, "you're the one who wanted this, and whoever plays with fire has to bear the burns." Celine wanted to say something, but his lips, which rushed to devour hers, stopped her. Damn, this bastard really knows how to kiss. It was a long, passionate kiss that made Celine feel butterflies in her stomach. She quickly surrendered to it, running her fingers through his hair. She could taste the blood from her lips from the intensity of the kiss, but she didn't care at all. She smiled to herself as his hand gripped her thigh. 2 hours later, Celine was asleep, her head resting on Christopher's chest, her body covered. Christopher had his arms stretched out under his head. Celine teased, "Are you sure you got shot this morning?" Christopher smiled. "I told you, even if I were burning in hell, I'd still want to make love to you." Celine playfully hit his chest, then noticed a flicker of pain in his eyes, which he quickly hid with a wry smile. "Does it still hurt?" she asked. Christopher sighed. For the 100th time, "No, I don't feel any pain." Celine smiled, placing her hand on his cheek. "I wish the sun would never rise." Christopher's voice was soft. "Me too." Celine swallowed, looking out the window. "How long until sunrise?" Christopher paused. 10 minutes and 5 seconds. Celine, trying to hide her true feelings, said softly, "We still have some time. What do you suggest we do with it?" Christopher's voice turned sly. "I can think of one thing we could do." Celine smiled. "Oh no, don't even try to think about it. Whatever you're made of, my body is practically broken. I don't think I can even move." Christopher smiled at her. Her cheeks flushed as she playfully hit him on the chest again. "Okay," Christopher said. "What do you suggest we do with the rest of our time then?" Celine sighed, resting her head on his chest again, and staying that way for a little while. Then she added with a smile, "I want to get to know you." Christopher smiled as Celine lifted her head, looking at him. "I want to know the real Christopher," she said. She smiled painfully and continued, "I want to get to know him before I kill him." Christopher stared at Celine's smile, the smile that had hidden so much pain for so long. "What do you want to know?" he replied. Celine thought for a moment. Okay, I'll ask you, and you answer honestly, okay?" Christopher sighed in annoyance, then added resignedly after seeing Celine's gaze, "Okay, ask." Celine smiled. Okay, what do you love most in life? Christopher shrugged. I don't know. Celine wanted to hit him, but stopped herself, forcing a smile. Okay, another question. Who do you love most? No one, he said. This time she really wanted to hit him. Christopher smiled when he saw that in her eyes. Celine pressed on. Okay, what's the happiest moment of your life? Christopher stared at her for a moment, then smiled sarcastically. What? Celine asked. Don't tell me there aren't any happy moments. Unfortunately, there are, he said. Celine's face lit up. What is it? Christopher held her gaze. Tonight. Celine sighed wistfully. 5 minutes left. Christopher's features stiffened. Yes, there's one more question. Celine fell silent for a moment, staring at his stiff features. Then she said in a pained tone, if we had met at a different time, and under different circumstances, could you have loved me? Christopher swallowed hard, keeping his expression stiff. He knew the answer, but there was no point in saying it. He would never say it to her, but he said it in his mind. If I lived 1,000 lives, and were born 1,000 times, I would love only you. In this life, and in death, I will love no one but you. He smiled with a sigh. In these circumstances, or others, he said, it makes no difference. Celine smiled sadly, holding his cheek. It wouldn't have made a difference. Christopher gritted his teeth, his heart aching. Yes, he said. Celine looked out the window, and saw that there were only a few minutes left before sunrise. What a pity, she added. How will you bear being apart from me? We'll be enemies again soon. You won't be able to touch me. Christopher smiled slyly. And when has our enmity ever stopped me from touching you? I'll do it, and I'll do it. He kissed her neck, murmuring, I'm addicted to you. Celine's voice hardened. It will never be with my consent. Christopher pulled her toward him, kissing her until she closed her eyes, and tears streamed down her face. It wasn't easy at all. She would lose the Christopher who had been with her tonight. She would hate him again. She knew he didn't want it to end either. He was kissing her as if his life depended on it. His hands held her body so tightly it hurt, but she didn't care. She held him tighter, her eyes unable to stop crying. He was kissing her brutally, with disappointment, with sadness, with hatred, with torment. He pulled back slightly, breathing unevenly, glaring at her eyes with anger, then kissed her again with force and intense hatred, as if blaming her for something. Celine felt a ray of sunlight touch her skin. She gasped beneath his kiss, as if her soul had vanished with the sunrise. Christopher's hands moved away from her body. In an instant, she jumped up without looking back, leaving him behind, and went into the bathroom. As for Christopher, he remained frozen in place, staring at the ceiling, with a face as stiff as stone, and a lifeless gaze. After a moment, he placed his arm over his eyes. Celine remained sitting in the bathroom for hours, her face buried between her knees. She opened her eyes after a long time, rising with a lifeless expression. She washed her face with water, brushing her hair away from her face, and looked at her reflection in the mirror. She smiled sarcastically at herself. Welcome back, she whispered, and welcome to revenge. When Celine came out of the bathroom, Christopher wasn't there. She sighed angrily. The doctor had said he needed to rest. She shook her head sarcastically. Why should she care? She took a deep breath, feeling her body ache. She hadn't slept last night. Now she had to regain her balance and forget everything. Yes, that's what she would do. Elsewhere, Joanna slowly opened her eyes to find a faint ray of sunlight creeping in. Morning has come, she whispered, unfocused. Joanna tried to move, then screamed in pain. She fell back into her spot and looked at her body, only to find it covered in a map of purple, blue, and red marks, the traces of his slaps, and much more. She looked down to find the blood of her virginity staining the floor. Joanna gasped in pain as the memories of last night came flooding back. She closed her eyes, her heart aching. She tried to get up, despite the excruciating pain in her body. She made her way to the bathroom, rushing inside to take a hot shower to soothe her body a little. When she finished and stepped out, she looked around the room and smiled sarcastically. The bastard hadn't left her a single piece of clothing. Even the clothes he'd torn off her yesterday would have served the purpose. Luckily for her, there wasn't even a bed in the room to cover herself with. Joanna muttered, "Is this part of your punishment, Ricardo? To keep me naked and humiliated?" She sighed in pain and helplessness, making her way to a corner of the room and sitting there, hugging herself. She was just like a fetus, completely naked and curled up. But the difference was that here she was, having lost her virginity in the most horrific way, her heart torn apart by pain and anguish. At that moment, Joanna found no support or comfort except for her tears, which streamed profusely from her eyes in pain and sorrow for her plight. She remained like that for a long time, until she heard the sound of a key turning to open the door. She quickly wiped her tears, waiting for whoever was coming. The door opened. Ricardo, with his tall stature, entered the room, but the surprise was that he wasn't alone. With him was an extremely beautiful girl. Joanna's eyes widened in shock. Could it be that Ricardo had sunk so low as to humiliate her like this in front of one of his whores? Joanna said sarcastically, trying to hide the lump in her throat. "What? Do you want me to welcome your new whore?" Ricardo smiled. "Yes." Joanna furrowed her brows in confusion, wondering to herself what he meant, until Ricardo's answer hit her like a thunderbolt. "I want you to welcome my wife." Joanna sighed in despair and helplessness, making her way to a corner of the room where she sat, hugging herself. She was like a fetus, completely naked and curled up. But the difference was that here she had lost her virginity in the most horrific way, her heart torn apart by pain and anguish. At that moment, Joanna found no support or comfort, except for the tears streaming profusely from her eyes, tears of pain and sorrow for her plight. She remained like that for a long time, until she heard the sound of the key turning to open the door. She quickly wiped her tears, waiting for whoever was coming. The door opened. Ricardo, with his tall stature, entered the room, but the surprise was that he wasn't alone. With him was a girl of extraordinary beauty. Joanna's eyes widened in shock. Could it be that Ricardo had sunk so low as to humiliate her like this in front of one of his whores? Joanna said sarcastically, trying to hide the lump in her throat. "What? Do you want me to welcome your new whore?" Ricardo smiled. "Yes." Joanna furrowed her brows in confusion, wondering to herself what he meant, until Ricardo's answer hit her like a thunderbolt. "I want you to welcome my wife." Joanna stared at him in shock. Ricardo added, sensing that her heart might stop if he didn't explain. "This is Carla, the girl who will become my wife." Joanna looked at the girl named Carla and whispered, loud enough for Ricardo to hear, "She'll become your wife?" Ricardo nodded. "Yes, she'll be my wife. In 3 days, my wedding to Carla will take place, and she'll become my wife." Carla spoke softly. "Who is this girl, my dear Ricardo?" Ricardo looked at Joanna and replied slyly, "My whore." Joanna's eyes widened in shock. "So what? Have the roles been reversed now? The girl she thought was one of his whores is going to be his wife, and she's the one who's become a whore?" Joanna smiled sarcastically, thinking to herself, "Yes, Joanna, he's right. I'm the only one naked here, and I'm the one whose body is covered in marks of violence and rape, not her. Congratulations, Ricardo. You've succeeded in humiliating and destroying me." Joanna feigned strength. "If your clumsy little play is over, bring me my clothes and get out." Ricardo motioned for Carla to leave. She hurried out, and he took his calm steps toward Joanna. He crouched down to her level and whispered in her face. "The maid will bring you clean clothes," he said. "You can wear them." He stared at her face for a moment, then added, "I hope you've learned your lesson well, so I'll give you some advice. Stay away from my wrath, Joanna, for my wrath is as scorching as hell, and you've already been burned by the first wave of my anger. Don't mess with me. I'm not Christopher or Victor." He paused. "Is that clear?" Joanna's voice burned with fury. "Go to hell." Ricardo smiled sarcastically. "Hell, my dear? I just got out of it." He stood up and left the room, leaving Joanna behind, torn apart by grief. A few minutes passed, followed by the maid entering with the clothes. Joanna took them and put them on. In an emotionless tone, she said, "I'm going to my room." She nodded calmly to the maid, who smiled faintly. It seemed her confinement in this room had come to an end. Joanna left the room where she had been held, and made her way to her own room, with quiet steps, her body still aching like hell. She entered, and immediately lay down on her bed, staring blankly at the ceiling as she thought about her situation and Ricardo's wedding. Joanna whispered, "If you are not mine, Ricardo, you will not be anyone else's. You'll see what I'll do to you." Elsewhere, at Emily and Victor's place, Emily had woken from her sleep. She looked beside her to find Victor's spot empty. She got out of bed and headed toward the bathroom to take a hot shower. After she finished, she quietly came out to put on a blue dress that fell to her knees and had sleeves reaching to the middle of her arms, with a belt that cinched her waist. She let her hair fall loosely down her back as she walked toward the maid. "Hello," Emily said. "Hello, ma'am," the maid replied. "Where is Victor?" "Mr. Victor is in his office, reviewing some important papers." "Okay, Emily didn't finish her sentence because of the ringing of the doorbell announcing a visitor. "I'll open the door," the maid offered. Emily shook her head. "Go back to your work, dear. I'll open the door." "Okay, ma'am." Emily headed toward the reception hall, then the door, and opened it, only to be surprised by the sight of a very graceful young woman standing before her, holding a stack of papers in her hand. But damn it, she was dressed like a prostitute. You could barely call it clothes. "Please come in," Emily said. The girl looked Emily up and down with contempt and spite. Emily's beauty was innocent and childlike, unlike her own. Rose's voice was sharp. "Excuse me, maid. I want to see Mr. Victor." Emily raised an eyebrow in disapproval at the tone Rose was using. "I'm his wife." Rose looked at her with condescension. "I can take your husband from you in the blink of an eye, you little girl. So get out of my way and let me see Victor now, before I get angry and do something that won't be in your best interest." Emily's face flushed with anger. "You! How dare you! I'm going to—" Victor's voice interrupted from behind. "Come in, Rose." Rose ignored Emily's glare and fixed her gaze on Victor, who was still maintaining his usual composure. Emily burned with jealousy. That slut was practically devouring Victor with her eyes. Rose and Victor entered the office, leaving Emily in the reception hall, biting her nails in jealousy and rage. Several minutes passed. The maid had finished preparing breakfast and set it on the table in the dining room. Victor and Rose emerged from the office, heading toward the reception area, when the maid intercepted them. "Sir, breakfast is ready," she said. Victor stared at Rose, thinking how amusing it would be to see Emily's jealousy over him. Without hesitation, he added, "Please join us for breakfast, Rose." "Yes, of course." They headed toward the dining room, and each took a seat. Victor sat in his chair. Rose sat in Emily's chair. Victor didn't say anything. He was waiting for Emily to see her reaction when she entered. When Emily walked in, her gaze fell on Victor, and that woman sitting right next to him, in her chair. She felt a pang in her heart. She bit her lower lip, trying not to cry. Not in front of him. Not. Emily forced a quiet voice. "Good morning." Emily sat down in the chair across from Rose. Victor was trying hard to stifle his smile as he added, "Let me introduce you to Rose, one of my business partners." Emily replied calmly, "You mean one of the prostitutes?" Rose snapped. "What?" Emily asked. "Isn't your name Rose?" Rose narrowed her eyes. "Yes." Emily smiled coldly. "So you're Rose the prostitute." Victor put his hand over his mouth to stifle his laughter. He had always wanted to see the fierce side of his beloved and gentle wife, Emily. Rose turned angrily to Victor. "Mr. Victor, are you going to let her speak to your guests like that, in your own home?" Victor's tone was indifferent. "Apologize to our guest, my dear." Emily's voice hardened. "Why should I do that, Victor?" Victor smiled. "Because I ordered you to. And if you don't want to be punished, you'll apologize." Emily swallowed hard. He would hit her. Nothing would stop him. She knew that all too well. So not wanting to be humiliated in front of that whore, she looked at Rose and added, "I'm sorry." Rose nodded smugly. "Good. Next time you should know who you're talking to. Because in front of you, my dear, is a very feminine woman, not a foolish child like you." Emily bit her lip, barely holding back her tears. She felt her heart breaking, or rather, she felt betrayed. Yes, betrayed. She had expected Victor to defend her, or silence her in his own way, or do anything for her. But he didn't. He just stared at her calmly. She tried to take another bite to respond, but the lump in her throat was too big. She dropped the spoon from her hand and stood up. "I'm full," she said. She turned away, and a tear fell from her eye. No one noticed it, except Victor. She quickly left the room without saying another word. As soon as Emily left, Victor's calm gaze vanished. He slapped Rose hard across the face with the back of his hand, knocking her to the ground. Rose screamed loudly, clutching her cheek, and looked at him in terror, as he stared at her with deadly eyes that made her body tremble. Victor's voice was murderous. No one has yet been created who can hurt my wife or belittle her. You don't even deserve to kiss the dust she walks on. Unfortunately, you've brought this upon yourself, you bitch." He raised his phone to call the guards. "Come to the dining hall quickly." It wasn't even 2 minutes before the guards stood in front of Victor. "Take her to the rear dungeon of the palace," Victor commanded, "and do what needs to be done before I come to you." They took Rose and led her to the dungeon. It seemed their master was going to enjoy himself a lot today. Minutes passed, then seconds. Then Victor entered the dungeon. Rose was completely naked, tied to the ceiling, barely standing on her toes. Victor smiled calmly as he walked over to stand in front of her. He whispered, "Let's have a little fun." He went behind her and grabbed a wide whip with a very thin tip. He approached her and began to play a melody of pain on her body. One lash followed another. He kept whipping her for a long time, perhaps over 200 times, and he was still whipping her. He stopped then, watching her as she gasped for breath from the pain. She had screamed enough to exhaust herself, but her screams were in vain. The cellar's walls were soundproof. Victor threw the whip to the ground and began to play with another tool, the dagger. Victor held the dagger in his hand and approached Rose, who had wet herself in terror. Victor laughed loudly, muttering, "You filthy thing," but that was fine. He stood behind her, grabbed her hair, and began cutting it with the dagger as she screamed in terror. Victor took great pleasure in cutting it, making it impossible for her to tell where it began and where it ended. After Victor finished cutting her hair, he grabbed the dagger and began running it across her body, leaving a trail of blood in his wake. Victor continued to run the dagger over every inch of Rose's body he could see. Blood gushed out, but who cared? After he finished, he grabbed 2 fingers of her right hand and cut them off amid her screams. Then he grabbed 2 fingers of her left hand and cut them off. Victor stepped away to stand for a moment and admire the work of art he had created with his own hands. He smiled. He ordered one of his men to bring him a bucket of cold water mixed with salt and pour it over her to wake her up. She had lost consciousness after he cut off 4 of her fingers. His order was carried out quickly. Rose woke up gasping in agony, as if in hell itself. The salt stung every wound on her body. Victor's voice was calm. "I would have liked to spend more time with you, my dear, but I must check on my daughter and wife. So, I will end your suffering quickly." He sat calmly in his chair, crossing one leg over the other, and motioned to his men with his hand. They left the basement and returned carrying a huge metal box containing corrosive substances and caustic acids. Victor signaled to his men again to carry Rose and place her in the box. Rose screamed so loudly that the entire basement shook as she tried to move, but to no avail. Her skin began to melt down to the bone. Victor leaned his head back with a satisfied smile. He had taken his daughter's rightful place from that woman. He took out his phone, put the headphones in his ears, and listened to the voice that had always shaken his very being, the voice of his beloved when she was a little girl. He listened to her with ease, as if he were listening to the most beautiful symphony in the world. Victor remained like that for several minutes before leaving the basement and heading toward his beloved Emily. Emily was crying uncontrollably in her room. Her heart ached so much it felt like she was dying. She was interrupted by the sound of the door opening and closing. She looked up, still sobbing, to find Victor standing there. Victor approached her and sat down beside her on the bed, drawing her into his lap as she continued to cry. Yes, her tears would not stop. Her heart was truly aching so much she was drowning in her pain, silent, until she heard his deadly voice close to her ear. Victor said in a calm tone, "Do you want me to kill her? Will it make you feel better if I tear her body apart?" Emily remained silent for a moment. Then she turned toward him, staring at him, his hands still wrapped around her body. She stared at him for a moment, then swallowed hard and replied, her eyes still a sea of tears, "Do this for me." Victor looked at her with an expression devoid of emotion. Her eyes were red from crying. Her face was covered in sadness and pain. He kept looking at her with a gaze she couldn't interpret. Then he reached out and gently wiped away her tears. She didn't know what he was thinking. He just kept wiping her tears and running his fingers over her lips. Victor's voice was as calm as death, as if lost in thought. He didn't answer her question. "It's not for your sake," he said. "I just can't stand it. What that bitch did made you cry, and it's driving me crazy." I feel like an arrow pierces my soul when you cry, and the pain is terrible. You can't imagine how terrible the pain is. No one can imagine it. Emily's voice was soft. But you always make me cry. Victor smiled with pain and sarcasm. That's why I'm always in pain. I know I'm sick. I lost my mind a long time ago, from the moment I fell in love with you, and I've been in hell ever since. Emily smiled sadly at their situation. Don't do it, she added. Don't kill her. Just take her away from me. Victor smiled calmly as he whispered in her ear. Don't worry. I've made her go. And here Victor was right. Rose was gone, never to return. How could she not be, when even her bones had decomposed and not a trace of her body remained? Emily nodded quietly. Victor stood up, carrying Emily in his arms, and laid her on the bed on her side. Come on, he added. Sleep now, and get some rest. Emily looked up at him. Stay by my side, Victor, please. Victor's voice softened. Okay. He went to the other side of the bed and climbed up, bringing Emily closer to him and holding her in his arms. Go to sleep now, he said. Emily nodded quietly, burying her head in his neck. Soon, she fell into a deep sleep. Victor remained awake, gazing at his little girl and his beloved, thinking that even if he spent his whole life by her side, it would never be enough. The next day, Celine was sitting on the bed, feeling so bored that she sighed in frustration as she tried to figure out a way to stop Christopher from leaving. She had just overheard his conversation with Victor, and learned that Victor was coming to pick him up so they could go out, and she would be left eating alone, seething with anger and boredom. But no, absolutely not. She wouldn't let that happen. She would stop him from leaving by any means necessary. At the very least, having him in the same place as her made her feel at ease, even if he destroyed her, or she destroyed him. The important thing was that they were together in the same place. Was it great love, or even greater hatred, or simply possessiveness? After much thought, Celine decided to go to Christopher's office. She had learned from the maid that he was in the garden. She entered Christopher's office with great tension, walking slowly toward his desk, afraid. She whispered audibly to herself, "Why am I so worried? It's easy. All I have to do is faint. Yes, it's very, very easy. Yes, calm down." She took a breath. Okay, calm down, Celine. Damn it, maybe I should practice a little on what I'm going to do. She went over to the door and locked it so no one could come in. Okay, she said aloud. He'll come in and walk over to sit behind his desk. Then I'll get up and stand in front of him. She walked over and stood in front of the desk, put her hand on her forehead, and added dramatically, "Ooh, Christopher, I'm not feeling well." She fell to the floor, pretending to faint. Then she sighed, sitting up and muttering, "Not good." "Okay, one more time." She stood up. "Christopher, I don't feel well." "Ah." She fainted. This time the fall was hard. "Ah, that hurt," she winced. "Stupid Celine, you're supposed to faint smoothly." "Okay, let's try again." She stood up. "Ooh, Christopher, I think I'm dying. Ah, I feel like I'm suffocating. Please help me and stay with me. Don't go with your stupid friend." She fell unconscious again. Then she smiled sarcastically, tapping her forehead. "What an idiot. Well, I have plenty of time to practice." She stood up. "I'll have a drink to calm down first." Celine turned to walk toward the bar, but she saw something that froze the blood in her veins and took her breath away completely, leaving her frozen in place. Christopher was sitting next to the drinks table, staring at her with an amused smile and a sly look. It seemed like he was struggling to keep from laughing. Celine swallowed hard. Wait a minute, was he here the whole time? Did he see everything I just did? Stupid. Of course he saw everything. Look at his smile. Oh no. No, he didn't see it. He didn't see it. Damn that stupid maid who told me Christopher was in the garden. Celine didn't know what to do. She wished the ground would split open and swallow her. Her face turned pale. She forgot how to speak. She just stared into his eyes. Christopher didn't stop smiling for a moment. He raised an eyebrow, waiting for her to speak. Celine swallowed hard, opening her mouth, but the words refused to come out. Oh, the shame. The disgrace. Why don't I just die? Celine stammered. I am. She went silent. Christopher continued to stare at her calmly, still smiling. Oh God, how she wished she could die right now. He must think she's an idiot. Think? No. He's sure she's an idiot. She gasped, when someone knocked on the office door. Swallowing hard, she hurried to open it so Victor could come in. Victor stepped inside. "You're here, you bastard. I've been looking for you downstairs." He looked at Celine calmly, then added after a moment, "Why is your face so pale? Did you cut something?" Celine kept staring at Victor, unaware of herself. Victor continued, "Are you okay? Are you sick?" Christopher bit his lip to keep from laughing. "Yeah, I don't think she's okay. She fainted a little while ago." Celine closed her eyes, feeling very embarrassed. Victor said calmly, "Should I call the doctor?" Celine swallowed hard. "No thanks, I'm fine. I'll leave you two to your work." "I'm going." Victor asked, "Where to?" Celine's voice was flat. "To find a dark hole and bury myself in it. Goodbye." She hurried out. Victor raised an eyebrow, looking at Christopher. "What's wrong with her? What happened?" At that moment, Christopher lost control of himself and burst out laughing from the bottom of his heart. Damn, he'd never laughed like that in his life. When she first walked in, she didn't see him. He didn't want to catch her eye, and kept watching everything she did. He bit his lip so he wouldn't laugh at what she'd done. She'll be his undoing. No doubt about it. Christopher put his hand over his mouth, still laughing. Victor continued to watch him calmly. This was the first time Christopher had laughed like this, from the bottom of his heart. Christopher took a deep breath, trying to stop himself from laughing, and stood up, walking toward Victor. "Dear Victor, excuse me," he said. "I won't be going out with you today." Victor's voice was cold. "Fine, but know that Ricardo's wedding is the day after tomorrow." Christopher's eyebrows rose. "Oh, has Ricardo decided to get married?" Victor nodded. "Yes, he has." Christopher shrugged. "Okay, I'll be there then." As Christopher left the room, Victor smiled sarcastically and left as well. Christopher walked toward his room, a smile never leaving his face. When he reached the door, he sighed, trying not to laugh. He smiled one last time, then entered. He looked around to find the room empty. He glanced at the bathroom to find the door closed. He smiled as he walked toward it, and knocked several times. No one answered. "Celine?" Christopher called. "Are you in there?" Celine's voice came from behind the door. "No." Christopher clenched his teeth to keep from laughing. "Come out. I want to talk to you." "Just leave me alone, Christopher. Please, I want to die in peace." Christopher's lips twitched. "Really? Are you going to die in the bathroom?" "Yes." "Okay," he said. "I'll wait here for you until you come out." "I'm not coming out." "Don't you have a date with your jerk of a boyfriend?" "Oh, I mean, your nice boyfriend." "Yes, I do," Christopher said. "If you say no, I won't go." Celine's voice was sharp. "What does that have to do with me? Do whatever you want. I don't care." "All right," Christopher said. "I'm leaving." Celine lifted her head. That was quick. Why did he agree so fast? Damn it. How is she going to face him after the stupid thing she just did? He must think she's an idiot now. It's all over. She made a fool of herself and gained nothing. He's gone. She heard the door lock and knew he had left. She wiped her tears and got up, opening the door. The room was empty. It's a good thing he's gone. How is she going to face him? She lay down on the bed, talking to herself out loud. Stupid, stupid, stupid. She banged her head, then groaned in pain. Ouch, damn it. That hurt. A voice came from across the room. "You idiot." Celine jumped up quickly to find Christopher standing by the window. She gasped in fear. "What are you doing here?" she said, her teeth clenched in anger as she continued. "You really need to stop doing this to me. Aren't you leaving?" Christopher said sarcastically. "I can't just leave you here alone. You're sick." Celine's cheeks flushed. She covered her face with both hands and whispered aloud, "Just go. I feel so stupid." Christopher walked toward her and stood directly in front of her. "Yes, you're stupid. That's true," he said. "But you're the stupid one who made a heartless monster laugh from the depths of his soul today." Celine's voice dripped with sarcasm. "How happy I am. I've become a clown." Christopher smirked provocatively. "So have you." Celine's anger flared. "You're such a damn bastard. A retarded monster. A scumbag. And—" She couldn't finish. A hard slap landed on her mouth, so hard she tasted blood. Christopher gripped her hair tightly and cruelly. "If only you used your brain even a quarter as much as you use your sharp tongue." Celine groaned in pain as she looked into Christopher's eyes with a mixture of hatred and pleasure. She found only darkness in his gaze. Damn, damn, damn. She was scared. Her heart was going to stop from fear. But would she show him that? No. May heaven curse her and the earth together if she did. Celine smiled slyly. My tongue is used for other things, darling. She moved closer to him and pressed her lips against his, to weaken him and win this round against him. But against whom? Against Christopher? Celine kissed Christopher hard, but he didn't move. She kept kissing him hard, until she felt her breath being stolen from her. She pulled away slightly. Christopher's voice was cunning. Now it's my turn. He shoved her body hard, slamming her against the wall with brutal force. Damn it. She felt her bones shatter. A few seconds later, she found Christopher pinning her between him and the wall, taking her lips between his teeth and kissing her harshly and violently, making her moan in pain. But he wasn't satisfied with that. He began to caress her body in a way that would seduce even the most virtuous woman. When Christopher felt Celine's body relax in his arms, her helplessness, her intense desire for him, he smiled slyly and pulled away from her. "That was a good kiss, my whore," he said. "I have some business to attend to." He left the room with a sly smile and headed toward his office with calm steps. He was undoubtedly the victor in this round. Celine cursed Christopher and hurled insults at him. Damn it, damn it, damn it. He had turned the tables on her. She had lost to him. She threw her body onto the bed in frustration, covered her head with the pillow, and muttered, "Damn you, you bastard." Celine remained as she was until sleep overtook her. She fell asleep while vowing to Christopher that she would pay him back in kind. But would she succeed? Elsewhere, Joanna swallowed hard, struggling to open her heavy eyelids, to no avail. What the hell happened? That was the first thing she thought as she slowly regained consciousness, trying to remember what had happened with a pained expression due to her throbbing headache. Then the memories came flooding back. Damn it. She drank copious amounts of wine and started smashing everything in front of her. Furniture, acting like a complete madwoman. And all because of what? Because of her damned heart, which still loved Ricardo madly. Joanna finally opened her eyes. Where am I now? She looked around to figure out where she was in that very moment. Damn me. That was all her mind screamed, making her face pale. She was now lying in the last place she wanted to be after everything that had happened. She was in Ricardo's room, specifically on his damn bed. That reality made her smile wearily. She closed her eyes sarcastically for a long few seconds. She smiled at her own situation, deciding to finally sit up and look ahead, only for her smile to vanish the very next second. She saw him sitting on the couch in front of her, calmly smoking his cigarette. And just like that, without any warning, she found herself sitting in front of the man who had taken everything from her, the man who humiliated and insulted her, the man who had raped her body in the most hideous way, the man who would marry another girl and leave her floundering at his mercy. He was the love of her life and the wound in her soul. She kept staring at his sharp features, which always made her lose her mind, until she finally spoke after a long silence. "What?" she said. "Did you miss me, Ricardo?" Ricardo smiled a smile Joanna had never seen before, a hollow smile, devoid of life or compassion. There was literally nothing in his eyes, in every sense of the word. There was nothing human left in his soul at that moment. "You're a stupid whore," Ricardo said. "No, actually, you're laughable. That's the perfect description for you, my dear." Joanna got out of bed and walked over until she was standing in front of him, her voice stiff. "No, I'm not. The only whore is the one you're going to marry the day after tomorrow. And if we're being honest, it suits you perfectly." Joanna watched Ricardo rise from his seat, standing before her like a mountain, about to swallow her in its shadow. But she simply stood there, continuing to look at him with a stony expression, indifferent to his gaze and the terror in his deadly features. Ricardo smiled, slowly moving his hand across her cheek to gently brush her hair away, as if she hadn't said a word, as if he'd done it only to see the effect his touch had on her. Joanna didn't show any reaction worth mentioning, even when his hand moved from her cheek to encircle her neck, cutting off her air. Not an eyelid fluttered. She just kept staring at that smile of his with cold indifference, as if her life were in his hands now. This made Ricardo's smile widen slightly, as he tightened his grip on her neck. She should have been afraid, begged him not to kill her, anything. But no. Joanna found herself smiling. Yes, smiling, while his hand continued to squeeze her neck tighter. "You are the whore, my dear, not her," Ricardo said. "She's the one I'm going to marry, not you. She's the one I'm going to love and who will be the mother of my children, not you. Unfortunately, my little one, you made a mistake when you decided to mess with me, and this is your punishment. Ricardo doesn't break his word. You're a stupid whore who goes into men's arms in the middle of the night. Damn it. She was in pain, feeling her soul being torn apart. Damn it. He did all this to her just because she broke his word and went to the club. That bastard destroyed her, humiliated her, shook her to her core, raped her in the worst possible way, just for that damn reason. Joanna laughed. She burst out laughing in front of him, her eyes brimming with tears of rage. Oh, how funny it was. It was so funny that she pushed away his hand, which had slipped around her neck, continuing to laugh with utter hysteria. She just laughed, and stayed that way until she couldn't go on. Only then did she sigh, wiping her face with her hands, to take a deep breath, trying to regain her composure, to regain some semblance of sanity. But she failed. She failed completely. She raised her head, looking at him with a crazy, deranged smile. "You damn psychopath," she finally said. "Oh, you damn scumbag. You know, do you have the slightest idea what you've done to yourself, and to me? Because of your damn stupidity, because of your crazy mind, you've lost me. You've lost the only person who loves you in this whole universe. I love you, with all your madness, with all your sickness, with all your demons. I don't even know what to say." She was literally trembling with rage. Even her words were incoherent, but she couldn't stay silent. "You fucking sadist," she continued. "You want to marry that bitch, don't you? But you know what? That whore doesn't deserve it." She laughed again in the face of his gaze. "Fuck you. She definitely doesn't truly love you. There won't even be anything called love between you two. It won't be fucking love. Do you know how I know this? Do you know how?" She screamed at the top of her lungs in madness. "Because I know what true love is. I am the fucking love itself, not her. I'm the one who should be your wife. Me, not her." Joanna smiled angrily as she watched him sigh wearily, cutting short her outburst as he returned to sit on the couch behind him, as if she hadn't just been screaming like a madwoman in front of him. "Is this nonsense going to go on much longer, my dear?" That's what he said. That's all he said to her. She stared at him in disbelief. It seemed he had decided to play a game of Cold War with her. He wanted to humiliate her more and break her down further. But no, she wouldn't allow this. Joanna wouldn't be Joanna if she let this happen. Ricardo hadn't seen her madness yet. Joanna smiled softly as she moved toward him and knelt between his legs, gazing at him with a calm smile, without uttering a word. She simply stared into his eyes for a few seconds, a few very long seconds that felt like years. Ricardo simply looked at her, as if he could see what was going on inside her head, and was trying to figure out the reason for her strange behavior. "Okay, Joanna," he said, "be a good whore now, and get out of my sight. You've completely ruined my damn night." He tried to push her away, but she quickly stood up, sitting on his foot, and clinging to his shirt with an innocent expression. He raised an eyebrow at her. Joanna smiled calmly, bringing her lips close to his until they were almost touching. "Do you really want me to go?" she whispered. Ricardo smiled at her and nodded yes. Her smile widened as she sighed slyly, especially as she felt his hands wrap around her waist now. Well, it seems she could make his body want her. That's good. That's a really good discovery. And now it's time to play. Joanna's voice dropped. "I'll go, darling, but not before I do this." She kissed him with all her might, digging her fingers into his hair with fury. She kissed him with utter savagery, just as he used to do to her, mercilessly, inhumanely. She kissed him as if she wanted to swallow his rotten soul. She kissed him until she tasted the blood on his lips, until she felt every atom inside him. And even though he didn't return her kiss, she knew it had affected him, especially as he dug his fingers into her flesh, pulling her closer to him, as if he were afraid she would pull away, afraid to let her go. He was unconsciously begging her to continue. He was telling her this with his hands etched into her body. He was telling her that he wanted her to take his soul and every particle of him with that kiss. He silently begged her not to stop. He told her without words that he would truly die if she pulled away now. And that's why Joanna stopped. She had finally achieved her goal by turning the tables on him. So screw him and what he wanted. She slowly pulled away from him, licking the blood from his lips, and smiled indifferently at his surprised and angry expression. "Sorry," she said. "I didn't mean to do that." She stood up coldly, pushing his hands away from her with indifference. "See you later, dear, and sorry for ruining your night. Good night." That was the last thing she said before she walked out of his room, without looking back, closing the door behind her with a sly smile, to see that blonde girl named Carla standing there, staring at her with a face full of hatred and contempt. How could she not? When Joanna had ruined her night with Ricardo, Joanna spoke to herself, thinking, so this is the night she ruined for him. "Where were we?" Joanna said cheerfully. "I think we're going to listen to some beautiful music now." Indeed, Joanna hadn't even finished her sentence before the sounds of him smashing everything in his room began, just as she had expected him to do to vent his anger. She smiled even more in front of the terrified Carla as she heard the sounds of breaking glass. That bastard had truly lost his mind. She smiled at her, reassuring her innocently as she pretended to talk to herself. "This is love and what it does to us. Ricardo is a deranged bastard. I really loved the room's design. What a pity." She looked at Carla and added maliciously, "I advise you to stay away from him until my influence over him wears off." She laughed lightly. "Enjoy my leftovers while you still can, dear." She waved her hand in farewell and turned to leave with arrogance, ignoring Carla as she walked away with a swagger. Devil's Fall Part 1 ends here. I hope you enjoyed the story. Don't forget to hit the subscribe button so you'll be notified when Part 2 is published. See you in the next chapter of darkness.